"Sir, I believe this watch belongs to you," said the gruff voice on the other end of the line. "It's an Omega Speedmaster. It has an engraving on the back that says, 'To my shining star with all my love, Mom.'" My blood ran cold. I was sitting in my office in Denver, reviewing sales reports, when the phone rang. Unknown number from Colorado. Normally I would have ignored it, but something made me answer. "That's impossible," I muttered, instinctively opening the drawer of my desk where I kept my watch during business hours. Empty. Completely empty. "Sir? Are you still there?" Yes. "Who is this?" "Pete Rodriguez, Golden Eagle Pawn Shop on Colfax. Look, I don't usually call people like this, but when I saw this watch..." "Your mother was Sarah Chun, wasn't she?" My heart stopped. My mother had died 2 years ago of cancer. That watch was the only thing she had left me specifically. It wasn't worth a fortune, but every scratch on the surface told a story. Every tick was a memory of her checking the time before driving me to school. "How do you know my mother's name?" I asked, my voice coming out lower than I intended. "Your mother brought the watch in here from time to time for cleaning. Lovely woman. She always talked about her son who was a lawyer working downtown. When this watch came in yesterday, I knew something wasn't right. My name is Michael Chun, and at 32 years old, I never imagined I'd be questioning whether my own family had stolen from me. But as Pete spoke, pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed began to fall into place. Who brought the watch?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Young guy, early 20s. Said he was family. He was nervous, sweating profusely. He asked for $8,000, but I offered $5,000. He took it right away, no haggling. That was an immediate red flag. $5,000. My mind processed the number as cold anger spread through my chest. After years of working in corporate law, I knew how to recognize when someone was being taken advantage of, or when someone was desperate. "Are there security cameras?" I asked, already knowing I would need evidence. "Sure. And I have the paperwork too." He left his driver's license as temporary ID. Dylan Morrison, 23 years old. Dylan. My cousin Dylan. My Aunt Patricia's son, who had moved to our city 6 months ago to attend the University of Colorado. The same Dylan who was living at my aunt's house, just 3 blocks from where I lived. "Mr. Chen? Would you like me to keep the watch here for now?" "Yes, please. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up the phone and stared at the empty drawer. Last night, as usual, I had put the watch there before leaving the office. This morning, I checked as I did every day. It was there. So sometime during the workday, someone with access to my office had come in and taken the only physical reminder I had of my mother. Someone in the family. I grabbed my keys and left, my mind already working on the legal details. Theft among family members was still theft. But before I made any drastic decisions, I needed to understand what was really going on. What Dylan didn't know was that I'd been noticing small signs for weeks. Money disappearing from my wallet when I visited Aunt Patricia. My Netflix account being used at odd hours. Small valuables going missing and then reappearing in different places. As I drove down Colfax toward the Golden Eagle, one question kept running through my head. If Dylan was so desperate for money that he stole my dead mother's watch, what else might he have done? If you're curious to find out how far family betrayal can go and how this story unfolds, keep reading, because what I discovered at the pawn shop was just the beginning of a much bigger revelation. The Golden Eagle Pawn Shop was in an old part of Denver, between a laundromat and a Mexican restaurant. Pete Rodriguez was waiting for me behind the counter, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a serious expression. "Mr. Chen? I'm Pete. Thanks for coming out so quickly." He disappeared into the back and returned with a navy blue velvet box that I recognized immediately. It was where my mother kept her watch when she wasn't wearing it. "Before I open it," Pete said, "there's something you should know. That kid, Dylan, wasn't just nervous. He was lying through his teeth. He said the watch belonged to his grandfather, who had recently passed away. But when I asked him basic details about the model, he didn't know anything." Pete opened the box, and there was my mother's Omega Speedmaster. The gold medal gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the store, but what made me choke up was the engraving on the back, "To my shining star with all my love, Mom." "Your mother told me the story behind that engraving," Pete continued. She said you were always the light of her life, especially after your father left when you were a child. She saved for 2 years to buy this watch as a graduation present for you. My hands shook slightly as I took the watch. Every detail was exactly as I remembered. The small scratch on the face that happened when I helped my mom move into her smaller apartment. The slightly worn chain because she never took the watch off, even to sleep. Did Dylan show any ID? I asked, forcing my voice to remain professional. Colorado driver's license, like I said. But here's the interesting part, he didn't want to sign the final sale papers. He said he'd come back later to finish up. He left the watch as collateral for a temporary loan. That didn't make sense. If Dylan really believed the watch was his, why wouldn't he sell it outright? Unless he knew he'd eventually have to give it back. Can I see the security camera footage? Pete led me to a small office in the back of the store. On the grainy monitor screen, I saw my cousin Dylan clearly. Messy brown hair, wearing a University of Colorado t-shirt, constantly looking around as if he expected to be discovered at any moment. See how he can't stand still. Pete pointed to the screen. And notice how he avoids looking directly at the watch when he hands it over. Classic body language of someone who knows they're doing something wrong. As I watched the video, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. 3 weeks ago, Dylan had casually asked about the watch during dinner at Aunt Patricia's house. He had commented that it looked valuable, and asked if I really needed to wear something so expensive every day. At the time, I thought it was just curiosity. Now I realized it was recognition of territory. How long did he say he needed the money for? I asked. That was another red flag. He said he needed it for an investment opportunity that couldn't wait. When I asked for details, he was vague. He talked about cryptocurrencies and some kind of app. Cryptocurrencies. Of course. Dylan had spent the last few months trying to convince anyone who would listen about his innovative investment strategies. Apparently, those strategies included stealing family watches. Pete, I need to ask you something. You said you'll keep the watch safe, but legally, what happens if Dylan comes back wanting to redeem it? Pete looked at me with an expression that was a mix of experience and exhaustion. Son, in 30 years in this business, I've learned to distinguish between legitimate property and stolen property. That watch may be in his name in the system temporarily, but the real story is written in every detail. He picked up the watch and pointed out small details I had never noticed. See these microscopic marks here on the strap? Those are from adjustments made for a smaller wrist, a woman's wrist. And here, where the strap meets the face, there are traces of a specific perfume. Not something a 23-year-old would wear. Pete was more observant than I realized. What's more, he continued, your mother brought this watch in for maintenance 6 months before she died. I have all the records. She was worried because you were working so hard that you hardly noticed if the watch was running properly. It hit me like a punch in the stomach. My mother was dying, and she was worried about a watch because she knew it would be her last way of taking care of me. Does Dylan know you found out? Pete asked. Not yet. But he will soon. I left the store with the watch safely in my pocket, but with a much heavier weight on my chest. It wasn't just about the stolen object. It was about the systematic betrayal of people I considered family. As I drove back home, I called my assistant Jennifer at the office. Jen, I need you to cancel all my appointments for today. Something urgent has come up. Sure, Michael. Is everything okay? Let's just say I've discovered that family issues can be more complicated than corporate litigation. My next stop would be Aunt Patricia's house. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. If Dylan was stealing from me, what else might he be doing? And more importantly, did my Aunt Patricia know? The woman who had helped me pick out a suit for my mother's funeral, who had cried with me during the burial, who had sworn she would always be there for me. Did she know that her son was stealing the only physical reminder I had of my mother? As I pulled up in front of the 2-story family home where I had grown up visiting every Sunday, a much more disturbing question popped into my mind. If they were capable of stealing something so sacred, what other things had they taken from me without my noticing? Aunt Patricia's house looked different when I pulled up in front of it. Not physically. It was still the same 2-story Victorian with the well-kept garden I had visited since I was a child. But now, every detail took on a sinister meaning. Dylan's blue Honda Civic was in the driveway. Perfect. I wanted to confront them both together. I rang the doorbell and waited. Hurried footsteps in the hallway, then Aunt Patricia's familiar voice through the door. Michael? What a surprise. Come in, dear. She opened the door with a smile that seemed too forced. Patricia had been my mother's younger sister, and for years she had been like a second mother to me. Brown hair with blonde highlights, always impeccably groomed, she had been working as a bank manager for 15 years. Hi, Aunt Pat. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Of course not. Dylan's upstairs studying. Would you like some coffee? Studying. Of course. While she made coffee in the kitchen, I looked around the house with new eyes. On the living room shelf, there was a crystal figurine that I recognized. It was my mother's. A little angel that had sat on her nightstand. Aunt Pat, I called from the living room, I didn't know Mom gave you that. There was a moment of silence in the kitchen. Then she appeared in the doorway, drying her hands nervously. Oh, that. Yes, she gave it to me just before, you know. She said she wanted me to have a special memento. That was a lie. I had seen that piece at my mother's house the week before the funeral. It was exactly where it had always been. What a coincidence, I said, reaching for my cell phone. I have a photo of Mom's house from a few days before the funeral. I'll check if I can find that piece in the photos. Her face went white. Michael, why would you do that? Are you questioning my word? No, Aunt Pat. I'm just curious about some things I've been noticing lately. At that moment, Dylan came down the stairs wearing headphones, clearly not expecting to see me. Uncle Mike. Man, you scared me. I didn't know you were here. He tried to sound casual, but I saw his hands shaking slightly. The same nerves Pete had described in the store. Hi, Dylan. How's school? I hear you need some money for a few projects. Patricia and Dylan exchanged a quick glance. It was too fast for anyone who wasn't paying attention, but to me it was like a confession. Oh, you know how it is, Uncle. College is expensive. There's always some new book or project to fund. I understand. What kind of project exactly? An app. For students to organize study groups. I'm still developing the idea. Another app. At least he was consistent in his entrepreneurial fantasies. Interesting. How much do you need to develop it? 5,000, maybe? Nothing too big. Exactly the amount he had gotten for my mother's watch. Dylan, I said, keeping my voice calm, where were you yesterday afternoon? Yesterday? Oh, at the library. Studying for final exams. Why? Just curious. Didn't you leave the library for any reason? Maybe to take care of something important. Sweat began to appear on his forehead. No, man. I was there all day. Mom can confirm that, right? Patricia nodded quickly. Yes, he got home really late. I was worried. 2 lies in a row. Interesting how they already had a story ready. Aunt Pat, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a minute? Sure, honey. As soon as we left the room, I lowered my voice. Auntie, I need to tell you something. Someone stole my mom's watch from my office yesterday. Her eyes widened. That's terrible. Did you call the police? Not yet. But I have a pretty good idea who did it. Who would do such a thing? That watch was so special to you. Her acting was getting more and more forced. Aunt Pat, I need to ask you this directly. Does Dylan have a key to my office? Of course not. Why would he? Because last week, when you visited me, Dylan spent some time alone in my office while we were talking in the living room. He said he wanted to look at my law books. Patricia was silent, processing this information. Aunt Pat, Dylan sold my dead mother's watch for $5,000 yesterday afternoon. I know because the store owner called me. Tears began to well up in her eyes. Tears of guilt, not shock. Michael, I can explain. Then you knew. He was desperate. The university is threatening to suspend his enrollment for non-payment. He told me you never wore the watch, that it just sat in a drawer. So you two planned this together. It wasn't planned. He told me you agreed to lend him the watch as collateral for a loan. I believed him. Aunt Pat, Look me in the eyes and tell me you really believed that story. She couldn't hold his gaze. He's my son, Michael. I know you two were close as kids, but he's building his future now. I thought you would understand. Understand? He stole the only thing my dead mother left me to finance another impossible app scheme. That's not all, Dylan said from the kitchen door. Apparently, he had been listening to the entire conversation. Uncle Mike, I know you have money. You make good money, you don't have kids, you don't have a wife. That watch was just gathering dust. Gathering dust. Man, you don't even wear it. It's locked in your office drawer. Meanwhile, I'm here struggling to pay for college, trying to build something. The anger I had been holding back throughout the conversation finally exploded. Dylan, that watch was worth way more than $5,000. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that it was the only physical thing I had left from my mother. And you stole it. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. Without permission. That's stealing. Patricia stepped between us. Michael, please. We are family. We can work this out. Family. I looked at her, then at Dylan. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't lie to family. Family doesn't justify theft by saying the victim has money. Uncle Mike, I'll pay you back as soon as the app takes off. When, Dylan? When exactly? After you spent the money from your trust fund on a car? After your other two businesses failed? This one's different. They're all different to you. But the result is always the same. Patricia tried one more time. Michael, Sarah wouldn't want to see the family fighting over material things. That was the last straw. Don't use my mother's name to justify this. Mom worked 2 jobs to raise me on her own. She saved every penny to buy that watch as a graduation present. And you think she'd be happy knowing you stole it? I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Patricia asked. To take care of this the right way. Michael, don't do anything rash. I stopped at the door and turned around. Aunt Pat, you had a chance to do the right thing. You both did. Now you're going to find out what happens when you steal from the wrong person. As I drove home, a strange calm came over me. It wasn't about the watch anymore. It was about principles. It was about what my mother had taught me about right and wrong. Dylan had bet that I wouldn't do anything because we're family. Patricia had bet that I would forgive her because she helped me when my mother died. They were wrong. And when I was done with them, Dylan would understand that some lessons are too expensive to ignore. The first night after the confrontation, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my home office, surrounded by papers, laptop open, building a complete dossier on my own cousin. As a lawyer, I knew that emotion doesn't win cases. Evidence does. And Dylan had given me a lot more evidence than I could have imagined. I started with the obvious: bank statements. As my mother's attorney during her illness, I still had access to some of her old accounts. That's where I found the first surprise. Dylan hadn't just stolen my watch. Over the past 6 months, he had forged Aunt Patricia's signature 3 times to withdraw money from her savings account. Small amounts, 200 here, 300 there, but enough to establish a pattern. My second discovery was even worse. Dylan was using my address to get credit cards. Apparently, fraudulent applications using my name and income, but with Aunt Patricia's address as a temporary address. I called my friend Marcus, who worked in financial crimes at the police department. Mike, man, this is serious. It's not just domestic theft. It's identity fraud on multiple accounts. How long could he get? With this pattern? 5 to 10 years. Especially if we can prove he had access to her personal information through family visits. But prison wasn't enough. Dylan needed to understand the consequences of messing with the wrong person. My third discovery came when I called the University of Colorado, pretending to be an employer checking Dylan's credentials for a potential job. Dylan Morrison? Sir, he hasn't been enrolled for 2 semesters. His account was suspended for non-payment in October. So Dylan had lied about being in college. He had lied about needing money for tuition. And Aunt Patricia knew it. Now I had the whole picture. Dylan wasn't just a desperate young man who had made a mistake. He was a habitual criminal who had turned our family into his source of illegal income. As I was building my case, my phone rang. Dylan. Uncle Mike, can we talk? I think I can work this out. Sure, Dylan. Let's talk. We agreed to meet at the Starbucks near the university. When I arrived, Dylan was already there, looking more nervous than ever. Uncle Mike, look, I know you're angry. But I can explain everything. I'm listening. The money didn't go to any apps. It went to pay off gambling debts. I was sure I could get it all back before you found out. Gambling. Of course. That explained the desperation, the elaborate lies, the systematic theft. How much do you owe, Dylan? $25,000. But I have a plan to get it all back. Let me guess. Another get-rich-quick scheme. No, Uncle Mike. This time it's different. I met some guys who have an operation. Well, I can't go into details, but I can triple the money in 2 weeks. Drugs. My cousin had gone from compulsive gambler to possible drug dealer. Dylan, you do realize you're telling me about illegal activities? It's nothing serious. I just need a little more money to get started. Could you lend me $15,000? I swear I'll pay you back with interest. $15,000? On top of the $5,000 you already stole. Uncle Mike, please. These guys aren't people you mess with. If I don't pay them, you'll get hurt. Or worse. If you're following this story of family betrayal, subscribe to the channel because what happened next was a lesson Dylan would never forget. Dylan thought he had me cornered. That I would pay to protect him because we're family. That my privileged upbringing made me naive about the real consequences of the world. He was wrong. Dylan, I'm going to make you a deal. You give me back the watch today. You confess to your mother about the forged signatures and the fraudulent credit cards. And I won't call the police. Uncle Mike, I can't. They'll kill me. Then you should have thought about that before betting money you didn't have. Before stealing from family. Before forging documents. You don't understand. I have no choice. You had a choice every step of the way. You chose to gamble. You chose to steal. You chose to lie. Now I'm giving you one last choice. What is it? You do the right thing, or I'll do it my way. What does that mean? It means I've been a lawyer for 8 years. It means I have contacts in the police department, the court system, and federal agencies. It means I can make your life a legal hell that will last for decades. Dylan went white. You do that to family. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't threaten family with criminals. Uncle Mike, help me. Please. I will help you. I will teach you the consequences of your choices. I left Starbucks with Dylan still sitting at the table, processing what had happened. He expected me to save him from the consequences of his actions. Instead, I was about to show him that some lessons are too expensive to ignore. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. One to Marcus at the police department. One to my college classmate who now worked for the federal prosecutor's office. And one to the law firm that represented the city's most aggressive creditors. Dylan had bet that I was too educated to destroy a family. He was about to find out that education and ruthlessness are not mutually exclusive. On Monday morning, everything started to fall apart for Dylan simultaneously. First, 2 detectives showed up at Aunt Patricia's door at 7 in the morning. Marcus had issued a search warrant based on the evidence I provided. They confiscated Dylan's laptop, his financial documents, and found 3 fake credit cards hidden in his bedroom. At 9, the law firm Steinberg & Associates filed a civil suit against Dylan for identity fraud. The lawsuit included photographs of the forged signatures, bank statements, and a handwriting analysis that proved the pattern of forgery. At 10, the federal prosecutor's office opened an investigation into her money laundering activities. My college classmate had been very interested when I mentioned the operations Dylan had described at Starbucks. But the final blow came at 11 in the morning. Dylan called me, her voice breaking. Uncle Mike, they want to arrest me. Mom's crying. What did you do? Exactly what I promised. I took care of it my way. You don't understand. Those guys with the gambling debts, they'll think I ratted them out. I'm gonna die. You should have thought of that before. Uncle Mike, please. Can we talk? I'll do anything. We agreed to meet at the same Starbucks as before. When I arrived, Dylan was sitting at a table in the corner, looking like he had aged 10 years in a week. He had dark circles under his eyes, his hands were shaking, and his clothes were wrinkled. Uncle Mike, thank you for coming. I know I deserve this, but I need to tell you the truth. I'm listening. It wasn't just $25,000 in gambling debts. It was $60,000. And the money I took from Mom's bills? It wasn't just a few hundred. It was $17,000 over 2 years. $17,000. Aunt Patricia had lost $17,000 to support her son's addiction. Go on. The credit cards in your name? I maxed out 5 of them. $15,000 total. I spent it all on online gambling, thinking I could win it back. How many accounts did you open fraudulently? 7. Credit cards, a bank account, even an account on an investment platform. I used your information because you never check your credit report. Mistake number 1. I checked my credit report religiously every 3 months. Dylan, you realize you've told me about federal crimes totaling over $100,000? I know. But Uncle Mike, you can stop this. You're a lawyer, you know people. If you say it was a family misunderstanding. Why would I do that? Because we're family. Because you've known me since I was a kid. Because Mom will die of grief if I go to prison. Your mother should have thought of that before she helped me steal. She didn't know everything. I lied to her too. Dylan, your mother helped me locate my personal calendar so you could copy my social security number. She distracted me during family visits so you could get into my office. She knew exactly what was going on. His face went white. How do you know that? Because she told me yesterday. When the federal agents showed up at her door, she confessed everything hoping to get immunity. Mom did that. Your mother betrayed me, Dylan. She helped me raise a son I considered a nephew. She let you steal my dead mother's watch. She forged bank documents to cover your lies. And when the going got tough, she turned you in to save her own skin. Dylan began to cry. Not tears of regret, but of sheer panic. Uncle Mike, I'm going to die. You don't understand. These guys don't mess around. They're going to think I called the feds. It wasn't the feds who found out about your gambling debts, Dylan. It was your own criminal creditors. What do you mean? When you used my name to open fraudulent accounts, you left a digital trail. When these criminals investigated your financial history to see if you could pay, they found several recently opened accounts. Accounts that didn't match your actual economic profile. That means they know you're a compulsive fraudster. They know you can't pay. And they know you're dumb enough to leave evidence everywhere. Dylan looked at me with growing horror. They're going to kill me. Maybe. Or maybe they'll use you as an example to other debtors. Or maybe they'll just disappear from your life now that they know you're being investigated by the feds. Did you plan this? I planned the consequences, Dylan. You created the situations that made those consequences inevitable. Uncle Mike, help me. Please. I beg you. I'll help you, Dylan. I'll give you some free lawyer advice. What is it? Confess everything. Cooperate fully with the federal investigation. Give them all the names, all the details, all the evidence. You might get a deal that reduces your sentence from 10 years to 5. 5 years. If you're lucky. If you don't cooperate, it could be 15 or 20. Dylan was silent for a long moment, processing the magnitude of his situation. Uncle Mike, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you do this to me? I know I deserve consequences, but why did you destroy me completely? I leaned forward, looking directly into his eyes. Dylan, you didn't just steal a watch. You stole the only physical connection I had to my dead mother. You didn't just forge a few signatures. You betrayed the trust of a woman who raised you alone after your father abandoned you. You didn't just lie about a few debts. You turned our entire family into a criminal operation. I know, but... There are no buts, Dylan. You made choices. Multiple choices, over many years, that hurt people who loved you. And when you were confronted, you showed no remorse. You showed desperation to get out of getting caught. I was scared. You were afraid of the consequences, not of what you did to people. There's a difference. Dylan hung his head. What's going to happen to Mom? Your mother will answer for her crimes. Forgery, aiding and abetting identity fraud, obstruction of justice. Probably 2 to 3 years in prison. All because of me. No, Dylan. Because of the choices you both made. Independently of each other. Uncle Mike, if I confess everything, if I return everything I can, would you consider talking to the prosecutor? Not to get me out of it, but to help Mom. For the first time in the conversation, I saw a spark of what could be genuine redemption. If you confess completely, if you cooperate fully, if you return every penny you can recover, I will consider testifying on your mother's character. Not to diminish her crimes, but to provide context for the pressures she faced. You do that. I do that for my mother's memory. She would have wanted me to show compassion, even in the midst of justice. Dylan wiped his eyes. Uncle Mike, how do I do that? How do I fix something so broken? You start by telling the truth. The whole truth. To everyone. And then you accept the consequences without negotiating, without trying to minimize, without blaming others. And then you build a life based on different choices. It may take decades for people to trust you again. Some may never trust you. But you do it anyway, because it's the right thing to do. Dylan nodded slowly. Uncle Mike, I know I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me? Dylan, forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you deserve through consistent actions over time. Ask me again in 10 years. I got up from the table, leaving Dylan alone with his thoughts. As I left Starbucks, my phone rang. It was Pete from the pawn shop. Michael, I have some news. That secret compartment in your mother's watch? There's something else inside. Something you need to see. As I drove back to the Golden Eagle, a single question hammered in my mind. After all this revelation about fraud and betrayal, what other secrets had my mother left for me to discover? Pete was waiting for me at the Golden Eagle with an expression that was a mixture of curiosity and reverence. My mother's watch was on the counter, next to a magnifying glass and some delicate tools. Michael, after you left yesterday, I continued examining the watch more closely. Your mother was a very clever woman. He picked up the watch and pointed to a tiny opening on the side that I had never noticed before. This isn't decoration. It's another secret compartment. Much more elaborate than the first one. Carefully, Pete pressed a specific spot on the strap. A small panel opened, revealing a microscopic space. Inside was a piece of paper even smaller than the first, folded with surgical precision. Your mother must have modified this watch shortly after buying it. Professional work, done by someone who knew it would one day be important. I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a code, a sequence of numbers and letters that I recognized immediately. It's an access key to a digital safe, I whispered. My mother worked in banking for 20 years. She knew how to protect information. Pete led me to the computer in the back of the store. I typed the code into a website my mother had used for work. The system recognized the credentials, and a video message began to load. My mother's face appeared on the screen, recorded clearly just days before her death. She was frail, but her eyes held the same determination I remembered from my childhood. Michael, my love, if you're watching this, it means the watch has been stolen and you've discovered both compartments. It means someone in the family has betrayed you, just as I feared would happen. My throat tightened. Even in death, my mother was still protecting me. You've always been very trusting of people, son. A beautiful quality, but a dangerous one. I knew Patricia had financial problems. I knew Dylan was becoming troublesome. So I took some precautions. The image showed my mother holding a folder. During the last 2 years of my life, I documented every unpaid loan, every favor exploited, every sign that our family was taking advantage of my illness. It's all here, son. Complete evidence. Pete looked at me with growing admiration. Your mother was a genius. But Michael, the recording continued, I want you to know that forgiveness is also an option. Use this information as you need to, But don't let anger consume your life. You're better than that. The video ended with an address, a law office in Denver that I didn't know. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the office of Janet Morrison, the lawyer my mother had secretly hired during her final months. Your mother came here 6 months before she died, Janet explained. She suspected that Patricia was embezzling money from her medical bills. She wanted to protect you from the consequences. Janet opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside is complete evidence of medical fund embezzlement, falsified insurance documents, and unauthorized bank transfers. Your aunt diverted nearly $30,000 from your mother's treatment funds. $30,000. Money that should have paid for experimental treatments. Treatments that could have given my mother more time. There's also this, Janet continued, handing me a second envelope. Your mother set up an education trust fund. $50,000 she saved secretly. She wanted you to use it to help young people in situations similar to Dylan's, but only if they showed genuine change. I left the office with a completely new understanding of the situation. It wasn't just about a stolen watch. It was about years of systemic betrayal that my mother had meticulously documented. That night, Dylan called me from jail. Uncle Mike, I confessed everything. About the forgeries, about the credit cards, about the gambling debts. Everything. And your mother? She confessed too. About Aunt Sarah's money, about helping me steal from you, about everything. Uncle Mike, she's devastated. She can't stop crying. Dylan, I need to tell you something about the money your mother embezzled from my mother's treatment. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. What money? $30,000. Money that could have paid for treatments that could have saved her life. Uncle Mike, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't know. But now you do. And you know what that means. It means I contributed to Aunt Sarah's death. It means that choices have consequences that go far beyond what we can imagine. 3 months later, Dylan was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Aunt Patricia received 3 years. They both lost everything, their home, their savings, their reputation. But the story doesn't end in prison. I used my mother's trust fund to create the Sarah Chin Foundation, focused on helping families with expensive medical treatments. In 2 years, we've helped dozens of people in similar situations. Dylan wrote to me from prison asking to volunteer with the foundation when he got out. Not out of obligation, but out of a genuine understanding of what his actions had cost. Uncle Mike, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want to spend the rest of my life trying to honor Aunt Sarah's memory in some way. Today, 5 years later, Dylan works as a financial counselor for people with gambling addictions. He never completely regained my trust, but he proved that people can change when they face the real consequences of their actions. Aunt Patricia never spoke to me again. She blames me for destroying the family, for not just forgiving and forgetting. Some people never learn that forgiveness doesn't eliminate consequences. My mother's watch is back on my wrist, where it always belonged. But now it represents more than a memory. It represents the importance of protecting what is sacred, even when that means making difficult decisions. Each tick reminds me that time is the one resource we never get back. My mother used the last months of her life to protect me from people she loved, but couldn't trust. The real lesson isn't about revenge. It's about recognizing that some betrayals are so deep that forgiving without consequences is actually a way of allowing them to continue. If this story of family betrayal and justice has touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories about people who refuse to be victims and turn their pain into purpose. The watch still works perfectly. It marks every second I spend honoring the memory of the woman who taught me that true family isn't based on blood, but on respect, honesty, and unconditional love. My mother died protecting my future. I live to make sure she didn't die in vain. Time really is the only currency that matters. And I don't waste a second on people who have proven they don't deserve mine.